For more on this, let's bring in Republican Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. Senator, it's good to see you. As we pointed out at the top of this hour, you were one of those people who was dismissed as a tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorist for even entertaining the idea that this thing emanated from a lab. And I'm wondering, have you been sending recipes to your detractors for how to cook crow?
No, John. What's most important here is that we get to the bottom of what happened and that we hold China accountable for what happened. Now, look, I'm glad that Joe Biden is finally willing to look at the evidence and just use his common sense. But what he announced yesterday is too little and too late. It's only kicking the can down the road, trying to avoid conflict and controversy with China for unleashing this plague on the world. I can bet what they're going to find in 90 days. It's exactly what they found over the last 18 months. Inconclusive evidence, because China has been concealing the evidence and probably has destroyed a lot of it. That's why it's time to lower the boom on the Chinese Communist Party and to make them pay for what they have done to the United States and done to the world.
Okay, so hearing that, it doesn't sound like you think that they'll find a smoking gun.
Sandra, I don't. I don't think that China is ever going to open up the Wuhan labs to a group of American scientists or international scientists. Even if they did, I think evidence has probably been destroyed. But again, all you have to do is use your common sense, look at all the evidence we already have pointing to those labs, and say there's a reason why China has been so secretive and so deceitful about this virus from the very beginning. They need to be held accountable for what's happened.
You know, when you look at this idea, and you sort of alluded to this a second ago, Senator, that the intelligence community at the direct direction of the president is going to take 90 days to look into all of this. Unless President Biden were to really lean on Xi Jinping, do you think that they'll find anything different? And even if, and you mentioned that China's probably gotten rid of a lot of this evidence, even if President Biden leaned on China, would they be forthcoming with anything?
No, John, I'm afraid they're not. And again, this is not something new. I mean, the intelligence community has been looking for evidence of the origins of this virus for 18 months, and they haven't been able to find anything, in part because China has been concealing the evidence and has probably destroyed the evidence. That's why I say that this is too little too late from President Biden. What he wants to do is get beyond what is a bad week of news about the likely origins of this virus. He wants to kick the can down the road 90 days into the summer and then hope that this all goes away. But they're not going to almost certainly going to find anything beyond what they've already found. That's why it's time to face the facts and start imposing some penalties on China.
Well, John Asher, who was talking to John last hour, was really integral in the investigation under the Trump administration. He was talking about what he describes as some very hairy stuff when they got in there, gain of function techniques he referenced. But he did ultimately say that he has confidence in the intelligence community to further explore more and to dig into this. But he did say he questions how much they'll actually say about what they learn. Where do you fall on that?
So, Sandra, I have confidence in our intelligence community, but, they can only find so much when China is using the vast resources of the Chinese state and the Chinese Communist Party to conceal this evidence, which is exactly what they've been doing for 18 months. Again, I sit on the Intelligence Committee. I know the work they've done on this. They've worked very hard for 18 months to uncover the truth in a conclusive, definitive form. There's a reason why we haven't been able to do that, because China views this as one of the most critical state secrets for them to protect. That's why it's time to start imposing penalties on China rather than kicking the can down the road the way Joe Biden has done.
Senator, stay with us. We want to come back to you just a second here. First of all, we want to go to this. The governing body of the World Health Organization meeting to discuss the findings of a so-called independent investigation into COVID, but there are concerns that some of the key data was left out. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin has got those details for us. What do you got, Jen?
Hi, John. Well, Fox News has learned that when China announced at the World Health Assembly this week that it did not plan to cooperate with any more investigations, considering the virus origin case closed, that triggered the Biden administration to act yesterday. That's according to an official at the White House, demanding, and that's when Biden demanded the U.S. intelligence agencies report back to him in 90 days. More and more scholars are raising questions about the Wuhan Institute of Virology and whether work being done there may be the source of the pandemic. Daniel Lucy, a professor of infectious diseases at Georgetown, has served in China on the front lines of every pandemic since SARS in 2003 and Ebola in Africa. He flew to Hong Kong at the start of the pandemic, but was too late. China had already closed access to Wuhan. He says a Chinese report from a year and a half ago suggests the outbreak began earlier than the official timeline given to the WHO by Beijing. He says the first cluster of cases may go back to October of 2019.
The WHO team really wasn't authorized or empowered or as part of the terms of reference to do a proper investigation of the lab origin hypothesis. So I think that should be done now.
My colleague Lucas Tomlinson spoke to General Mark Milley aboard his plane flying back from the Air Force Academy. He says he still doesn't know where the coronavirus began.
My opinion hasn't changed because I haven't seen any different evidence. But you heard the president. We absolutely must get to the bottom of it because what I said a year ago is still true today. It's inconclusive. We don't know.
Josephine Ma, the editor of the South China Morning Post, reported in March 2020 that 266 people with SARS coronavirus 2 or COVID-19 infection between November 17th and December 31st. All of that suggesting the first infections may have occurred the first week of November, more likely October. That's not in the WHO report, John.
All right, Jennifer Griffin-Forrest at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you. And back now to Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Senator, here's the difficult story, or the difficult question, rather. 592,000 Americans have died from COVID. That's more than the collective war dead from World Wars I, II, and the Vietnam War. If it is found, or at least surmised, even if there's no smoking gun, that China allowed this to escape from a laboratory and then covered it up, what should happen?
John, as I said earlier, it's time to lower the boom on China for unleashing this plague on the world, killing so many of our citizens, destroying so many businesses and livelihoods. What would that look like? Well, for instance, we could take away their most favored nation trading status, one of the things they covet most. We could revoke their status at the World Bank, in which they get special loans from the World Bank. We could take away all of the visas of Chinese Communist Party officials and their children, who they love to send to American schools. We could open up federal courts so Chinese communist officials can be sued in federal courts by the victims of the coronavirus pandemic, just like we did for the 9/11 victims. There's really no end of the penalties that we can impose on the Communist Party for unleashing this plague on the world, and it's time to start doing that. It's not time to kick the can down the road and ask the intelligence community to look for 90 more days, what they've already been looking for 18 months.
Do you feel that there is bipartisan support for that push, Senator?
Yeah, Sandra, I do. China is not very popular in the United States, and when the Chinese Communist Party is behaving in this fashion, they're not going to get more popular. And if it is established somehow, let's say there's a whistleblower that emerges from these labs, or we get a trove of documents about this virus from the Chinese Communist Party dissident, the way we did a year and a half ago about the genocide that China is committing. Just imagine the righteous blowback that the American people will feel towards Chinese communist officials who are responsible for this plague.
Senator, if you could stand by with us, getting to another story, Facebook is lifting a ban on posts that were claiming COVID-19 was man-made. It is just the latest 180 from many in the media over the origins of this virus. Jackie DeAngelis has more. Jackie?
Good afternoon to you, Sandra. Well, let's start here. In a statement to Fox News, a Facebook spokesperson said this, quote, "In light of ongoing investigations into the origin of COVID-19 and in consultation with public health experts, we will no longer remove the claim that COVID-19 is man-made from our apps." Now, this came after Facebook's fact-checkers were accused of banning posts that suggested that COVID-19 may have, in fact, come from a laboratory. And moving on to YouTube, banning a post from a mom in Georgia who was disputing the mask mandate for her children. YouTube said that it violated the site's community guidelines as well as its medical information policy. Well, in response to our inquiry about that post, YouTube said this in part: "In accordance with our policies, we removed this video for including the claim that children are not affected by COVID-19. About claims that the virus came from a lab, the company essentially told us that they wouldn't ban posts on that topic, unless, of course, they triggered some other policy like harassment or hate." So again, these companies, Sandra, controlling some of the messaging here.
Thank you for that. We'll get back to the senator on that issue. This flip-flopping, does it surprise you?
No, I can't say I'm terribly surprised. Look, the pressure got too great this week on Facebook and these other companies. But just imagine, Sandra, if 15 months ago, when I was raising very reasonable questions about the origins of this virus and whether it might have accidentally leaked out of a lab, if these big tech censors at companies like Facebook hadn't gone into overdrive to protect all of their liberal friends, maybe we would have gotten to this reckoning a year ago. Maybe it would have been 14 months ago. That's why censorship is often so bad, is because it suppresses very reasonable debate. It makes it harder to hear all of the arguments and all of the facts about a matter of public controversy. And that's why we should oppose censorship at these giant big tech platforms, just like we oppose it from governments.
You know, Senator, I know you said at the top of this segment that the more important thing than watching your critics eat crow was to get to the bottom of what happened. But there's got to be a certain sense of, I told you so, and where were you a year ago, and how do you just reverse course without pointing out that you got it so wrong a year ago when you were dismissing concerns from people like you, President Trump, and others, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, that this thing might have come out of a lab?
You know, John, when you're a high-profile conservative, you just get used to the blue media making those kind of false claims and misrepresentations. But what really does matter is that we try as best as we can to get to the bottom of the origins of this virus, but even more importantly, that we begin to impose real penalties on China for what they've inflicted on America and inflicted on the world.
What was really going through your head, Senator, when we let into you, when we were reading those headlines, clearly attacking you for your statements on this virus and the origins of it back then?
Well, I don't have any tinfoil hats at home. I just have an Army hat that I put on every now and then. So my critics are wrong about that one as well.
All right.
Senator Tom Cotton, always good to spend time with you. Thanks for joining us. And we hope you have a good Memorial Day as well. Thank you for your service to this nation.
Thank you, and a blessed Memorial Day for all the Gold Star families out there.
Absolutely. Senator, thank you.